Good afternoon. Everybody had a long week? Good week, but a long week. So let me start with a quick introduction. My name is Lance Fountain. I'm Cargill's Global Operations, Automation, Digitalization, and Analytics Leader. It's a long title. I can't get it on a card. But we're going to try to shorten it. They wanted to shorten it to ADA, but it kind of had some other meanings, so we didn't do that. Give you a little bit of my background. I've been working in this data world for about 25 to 30 years. I started in the mid-90s with a company called Alcoa and spent 21 years doing automation, engineering roles, and eventually wound up in IT where I was playing with servers and data and connectivity. And then we did IIoT convergence at Alcoa, and that enabled our smart manufacturing program. And in 2013, I left and went to a partner. I went to OSI Soft and worked there for 5 years as their principal advisor for digital transformation. And in 2018, Cargill asked if I'd come back into manufacturing and lead their smart manufacturing efforts. So just a little bit of my journey and what brought me here. And we have formally kicked off our smart manufacturing strategy at Alcoa. And it means more than just data, as you can see here. It means automation, digitalization, and analytics, and all the data that comes with that. So just a quick introduction to Cargill, if you don't know who we are. We're a company that's privately held. We're a private company, over 150 years old, working in about 70 companies, about 160,000 employees globally. And the thing I think that was really hard to understand when I first came to work for Cargill is just how many sites that is. So that's somewhere in the order of 13 to 1,400 sites across the globe. Some pretty large sites, some pretty small sites. And as the slide says, we work in agriculture, food, animal nutrition and protein, and financial and industrial. So about one of every 3 things you eat has something Cargill in it. So thank you for that. Keep eating. And we were just under the $3 billion mark in adjusted operating earnings in 2019. So very large company. And what is our vision? We want to be the most trusted partner in food, agriculture, and nutrition. So that's what we strive to do. We feed the world, and we want to be the best at it. Okay? Just a little bit of background on Cargill. So let's talk about what Cargill is doing in regards to Industry 4.0 and smart manufacturing. So the very first thing we had to do, and I think everyone will recognize this, there are a lot of buzzwords out there, right? We have digital transformation, we have smart manufacturing, we have the integrated digital supply chain, we have Industry 4.0, we have IoT. You know, it's tough to chase all those megatrends, right? At some point in time, if you go out and you read the literature, there's alignment, but there's not perfect alignment. So at some point in time, you got to say, this is what it means to us. So this is the way we've framed Industry 4.0 and smart manufacturing. And we're going to kind of drill down here. So you'll see here, we have an organization in the middle in the internal impacts. We call that BOSC. It stands for Business Operations and Supply Chain. And we do plan, source, make, and deliver. And obviously, we want to do that safely to high quality standards. And we want to invent new products. So we call that the BOSS function. But in addition, we have to look at the supply chain, the suppliers that we get our soy from, the suppliers we get our beef from, all the way through to the customers we provide, like the McDonald's of the world and the Wendy's and the Costco's. So we want to connect all that. And there are internal and external impacts. So we very clearly recognize that the digital world goes well beyond our walls into our suppliers and into our customers. But there's a lot we have to focus on internally as well as we go on this journey. So that's the big picture. And inside of Cargill, so now I'm drilling down internally, what it really means to Cargill, one of the efforts we have called out, and this is operating in parallel to the smart manufacturing strategy, is something we call the digital supply chain. So we create a lot of data in each one of our vertical functions. This should sound familiar, right? We all create data. We create data and make. Every time we take an order, we create data, right? Every time we buy something from a supplier, we create data. So we have recognized that connecting all that data across all those functions is very valuable. So why would we do that? We do it to make integrated and well-informed decisions, right? We want to do effective planning. We plan based on current condition, based on what we see coming at us in the future. We want to take all that data, integrate it, and we want to build decision support systems that help us make the right calls for our business. So we're calling this out as a clear strategy, and we're labeling it our digital supply chain strategy, okay? Then in parallel with that, we also have an effort in the make space, and we're labeling that smart manufacturing. So that is our focus on anything and everything make. So when we get a plan, how do we execute that plan in operations, all right? So and this is where the technology gets really complex, because most of the other functions are very ERP, enterprise driven. They're relational transaction driven. When you get down into make, that's where we get into this complexity of the IIoT convergence. We get into the complexity of networked instruments and control systems and advanced process control and MES and MOM and anything and everything that falls under that umbrella, LIMS. So how do we bring structure to that chaos? How do we really organize our efforts there to become digital? Okay, so we're calling that our smart manufacturing strategy. So why are we doing that? And this shouldn't surprise anybody. I took the number out. I didn't know if it was sensitive information, so I took it out. But why are we doing this? Well, if you go out and do research, as many of the people in this room have done, and if you look at the large thought leaders in this space, you know, they're saying there's a tremendous potential to impact cost of goods sold, to get at the hidden factor. Everybody knows what the hidden factor is. That's opportunities to increase yield, okay? And also to reduce working capital. And when you start to run through the numbers there, you get a pretty big business case. Now, we always get some pushback in this process, right? Because somebody will come along, usually it's a finance person. I didn't say that. But usually somebody will come along and they'll say, well, what is that business case and what do you mean by those dollars? And next thing you know, you're doing this exercise in a spreadsheet trying to turn it into dollars and cents. You can't do that. I mean, practically, if you're gonna go on this journey, you gotta believe it's the right thing to do. If you don't believe it's the right thing to do, then probably you're not in the right place, right? Because the world is chasing this digital opportunity. And when you look at numbers and articles that are published by the likes of McKinsey and Accenture, what you're seeing is significant impact on KPIs. So I think yesterday I heard a 10% improvement. These are big dollars. So, you know, we have KPIs because they're the measure of how we're performing, right? And a 10% impact on that KPI is a big dollar amount. So you've got to think about it in the big picture if you're going to go on this journey. If you try to nickel and dime to solve this business case, you're not going to solve it, okay? So you got to believe. And the hardest part about getting somebody to believe isn't putting a number on a screen. It's getting them to buy in, right? That's what a lot of times is lacking as people get started in the journey is where's the buy-in? How do you get the right people on board, okay? And it takes everybody. It takes the Army, right? So this is our smart manufacturing strategy. So this, you know, I gave you the why we were doing it. We think it's a tremendous value opportunity. And if you look inside the make space where we're going with smart manufacturing, here's how we've framed our strategy. And of course, there's a lot of detail under this, but we'll kind of quickly talk through it. The first thing is we focus it on outcomes. This is not about the technology, right? The technology enables the outcome. We all buy into that. But this is the same value you're trying to get with your operational excellence team, with your continuous improvement team, right? With your manufacturing teams, your manufacturing technology teams. It's the same value. We're just saying if you take technology and you inject it into the equation, you're going to get value easier, you're going to sustain it more practically, and you're going to drive step change performance and improvement, okay? So technology is an enabler, and we're looking at outcomes. So I'm going to talk about the three outcomes we really target. The first one is a smart site. This is the idea of the true factor of the future. And, you know, the first thing I want to say here, this is not new, all right? We have been doing this. We've been on that journey for decades, all right? I put in control systems in the 1990s. Why did we do that? It was quite easy. We were trying to impact cost of goods sold, right? We were trying to take people out of harm's way. All those same value levers that you're trying to pull now, we've been pulling since the 90s. So we're continuing that journey. And what does the plan of the future look like? If you really think about that, we heard from Ericsson, great presentation, but they're saying, I'm going to design a showcase facility. And it's going to show me what I'm capable of and what the new operating model looks like. All right, that's that factor of the future. The next thing we want to do is focus on what we're calling the smart network. And what the smart network is all about is when you're a large company like Cargill with a lot of like manufacturing processes, how do I start looking at those processes as common? Okay, we call that the integrated operating company, right? So we have 20 manufacturing technologies, we operate them all over the world. How can I look at those from a remote monitoring center or remote operation center? By the way, this happens all the time in oil and gas and metals and mining. How do we do that in food? All right, and I want to look at my entire fleet, and I want to baseline, and I want to benchmark, and I want to be able to leverage subject matter experts. To get there, you know what you need? You need a common language. You need a common view of your operations world. So that's kind of the next step in that journey, not only to modernize the site, but now how do I turn that site, and all of our sites have a lot of differences in diversity. How do I bring structure to that diversity? And that's the idea of the smart network. And then the third one, and I think this is maybe the most important one of all, it's the smart company. And what we really recognize there is we do a lot of work that is not considered Cargill IP. We make food and feed the world. We are not experts at operating boilers, necessarily. I'll say that. We're not experts at monitoring rotating equipment, all right? So what a smart company is all about, how do we take our data that's non-IP and get it out to you who provide us services so that we get value add and drive better performance. So this is all about sharing outside of Cargill. And this has not been something that's always been embraced, right? People are very protective of their data. But that's a conscious decision. What are you going to share? What aren't you going to share? Okay, so we're going to look to do that as part of our strategy as well. Okay? And then we're enabled by technology. Just cover this very quickly, but very important. And we'll talk a little more about this in a moment. How are we going to drive technology? The first thing is we got to get better at supporting what we already have. All right? So I don't want to air any dirty laundry here, but you can't shut down plants because you have a network outage. You can't do that. And I bet you some people in here have experienced that, and I won't say I will or haven't because I'd be wrong. But we got to get better at supporting our footprint. That's a commitment, right? That's a commitment. So I'm going to just tell a little quick story here, right? What happens as we have pushed the productivity in our plants and in our companies, what's happened? Has anybody been in that meeting at the beginning of every year when you talk about budgets and we all got a cut? What do? We spread it like peanut butter, right? Everybody's going to get a chunk of cut. Well, if you're going to become a digital company, I'll tell you what, you're going to improve your productivity, no doubt about it. But to do that, you better believe you're going to make investments not only in technology, but the people who support your technology. If you're not willing to do that, it's probably time to get off the train, right? Because that's an investment you're going to have to make. So we've got to learn to make that investment, and we've got to learn to support what we have. The second is, how do we redesign our foundation? So just like any asset in our plant, our digital infrastructure is an asset. Are we maintaining it? Are we doing life cycle management? Are we doing upgrades, patches? You know, and this is not just IT, by the way. This is OT as well, right? When we have an old PLC or an old VAX VMS machine that's running a critical process, is that okay? Do we really want to operate in that world? And the answer, I hope, is no. So how do we really take the foundation we have now, redesign it, redevelop it, so that it's easily sustained, maintained, and managed, okay, and supported? I guess I should add the word support there as well. So that's kind of a redesign, supporting what we have and then redesigning to scale. Now, the third thing, and this is where everybody wants to live and everybody wants to talk about, igniting new possibilities, the new technologies. Yes, we all want new technologies, but if you think that's smart manufacturing, you're wrong. You'll fail. You have to do all 6 of these things together, okay? So the other thing we're adopting as part of our smart manufacturing strategy is this idea of lighthouse sites. We can't go work at 1,300 locations tomorrow, right? So what we're saying is, where are those sites that we're going to go and focus on and make them kind of the leaders or the sites that'll be out in front really driving the change. And change is not just technology, it's people, process, and technology. We need to define those sites, get them out in front, and let them demonstrate how to lead the way. And again, it's more than just technology. I did have somebody ask me, does that mean we can't innovate in other sites? Not true at all, right? Because what we're doing in a lighthouse site is we're developing with the intent to scale. Okay, very intentionally, we want to develop something that is going to be scalable. Innovation is not about scalability. Innovation is about trying something new. So again, recognizing the difference between the two, the lighthouses, we will innovate there, but we're also developing to scale, and they've got to be your out front leaders, okay? So just a little more detail, and I'll kind of wrap up here. The first slide is around the outcomes. What are we really trying to accomplish? And no reason to read the detail here, but we put opportunities or efforts into 3 buckets. How do I do a better job building and supporting my digital foundation? So think networks, network segregation, servers, cybersecurity, alarm management in the OT world, all those fundamental things we have to do. That is one focus area. The second focus area are next generation opportunities where we're going to apply technology and make step changes or maybe in some cases leaps where we're going to change the game, okay? And you can see some of the common themes under manufacturing technologies: automation, augmented reality, new instruments, right? Operational intelligence. Those are some of the step changes we want to make on top of the foundation. And I also make a little bit of a call out here. Even though each of our manufacturing technologies are different, there are some things we do from an OpEx perspective that are common. So how do we support those things with technology? So think about lean manufacturing and lean manufacturing practices. Can I support those with technology? And more, I think we're seeing the answer is yes. If you remember, we always used to put pins in the boards. Is anybody doing that digitally today? There's a big debate over, is that the right way to go? But I believe it is, and I think you can do it digitally. So a lot of those lean manufacturing practices can be common across technologies. And then finally, we have a category of which really represents data integration up into the organization. All right, we call that out separately, right? Because integration up to level 4, data has to be summarized, events have to be summarized, batches have to be summarized. We also want to get data down. Financial data is great data to bring down, right? If you want to change behavior on the shop floor, do your operators know how what they do every day impacts the bottom line? That's good integration to talk about, okay? So this gives you an idea of how we're organizing our opportunities. I think you hit on this earlier as well. And then finally, a little bit about the technology. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about our approach to architecture and what we're doing. The first thing is we're actually separating these efforts into 3 areas. The first is digitalization. Creating data with sources. Those sources can be manual data entry, transactions. We can get data from unstructured content, such as video. Everybody hear of vision systems, right? We're creating real-time data or maybe even summary data. Of course, traditional sensors and our friends that talk about IIoT, new sources of data, right? Well, when we get that data, then we put a level of control on top of it. And this is the old S95 model, right? But you certainly do control at the machine or process level. We also do operational control at the MES level. And we do business control at the ERP level. So we take all those sources of data, then we're crunching that data to do something, okay? Control a process, archive or document a transaction, all right? That's what we're doing in those systems. It's a level of control. Then on top of that, we want to start thinking about advanced analytics. And here's one of the big call-outs. It's this idea of common context. We have all this data. And data throughout all the history of mankind is doubling every 2 years. That's a phenomenal statistic, I think. Data is growing exponentially, and we've got to consume it. Well, to consume it, you have to organize it. And I sometimes react a bit when somebody says, well, we'll put it all in the lake and they'll figure it out. It's not going to happen that way. The people that know the data, they've got to give it some structure. Data inherently has to have some context. So this is about that context, and especially in a company like Cargill, we've got to develop context to scale. If we're looking at 20 like plants, we got to have a common language. This is about developing that common language. And you can have a lot of different twins. You can have an asset twin, a process twin, a KPI twin, a product twin. There are lots of different twins. People use the word all the time. It's not completely new, but how am I going to bring context and structure? When I do that, now I can apply analytics principles, machine learning, AI. What do I do with that? I learn in ad hoc mode, okay? And then when I'm confident I've learned something valuable, I turn that into knowledge. And how do we start with knowledge? We start with a very advisory capacity, right? Hey, operator, you should go and act, or supervisor, you should go and act. We're advising. When we learn enough and we're confident enough, we go beyond advise. We want to close the loop and push it back down into control, right? So this is kind of that journey of analytics. And when you think about going back into control, this is the premise, if you think about control systems, of some of the advanced process control, right? That's some of that premise. So with that said, that's a quick introduction to Cargill. I know we only had 20 minutes. I probably took 25. But I'm going to turn it over to the next speaker, and hopefully we'll have some questions and discussion after the presentations are over. Thank you.